Good morning. How are we? It's day 2, so let's be honest with ourselves, right? Who in here has run a marathon? Okay, what's the hardest part of that marathon?
Finishing.
The .2 in the 26.2, right? So I haven't run one recently, so I'm not here to say that I'm a fitness nut, but 2012 ran the Chicago Marathon. Everything was fine until that .2. That was a mental game that was unmatched. But one thing I just wanted to point out before we even get started here is really truly how cool of an event you all have had to participate in the next 48 hours, or the past 48 hours, because this is all great, but it takes a lot of orchestration to make sure everyone's fed, make sure everyone's engaged, make sure that the topics, the speakers are relevant to what you all are coming to this conference and participate in. I got a 100-foot walk from the hotel, which is incredible. 100-foot walk to the social last night, which is incredible. So just give a round of applause to the LimaCharlie team. It's a really, really solid event that's definitely going to grow. So thank you for that. So what are we here to talk about this morning is prevention. And this is going to be more at the onset, a philosophical mind adventure, right? We're going to talk about what trends we've seen in cybersecurity. We're going to paint pictures and analogy over other trends and other problems that are solvable, although intimidating. We're going to unpack it a little bit, and you will have something that you guys will leave with that is practical, that is tangible as a roadmap to help map this out. But first, we just got to look inward, got to reflect a little bit here. So first off, as Matt had said, my name is Mike Hornsby. I'm the Senior Solutions Engineer at BLOKWORX. Okay, prior to BLOKWORX in 2018, was in the Marine Corps for a year, did my active training, dropped to the reserve component, where I've been since 2018. And one word to the wise, if you're going to enlist in the military, don't do it at 25. All right, don't do it at 25. Why? Because everybody else is getting out of high school, going in, good legs, track stars, high school athletes, joined at 25. It was a humbling and good time. But that was right after my year. Met with Rob Bowles, our president, back in 2019, and since then have called it home. However, it's not the most important thing in my life. I have a beautiful wife. I have 3 daughters, 5, 2, and almost 1. There in the bottom right, we have Odessa, who we just got October of last year, and that's them. So I can't take them on the road everywhere, but this is for them. I take them on the road in a way that I can. One also really cool thing I got to be a participant of this past summer was an operation down in South America with the Marine Corps Reserve, the National Guard elements, in educating blue team tactics. We actually held a CTF for about 48 hours for 5 partner nation countries. So they had all their individual cyber defense teams. You'll notice this is probably the coolest piece of military swag I've ever seen in my life. It's not an FBI jacket. It's a cyber defense jacket with the flag. So I don't know how we need to get one of those, is all I'm saying. But we had a really awesome opportunity where we went through about 5 different days of modules. You'll notice here, if you can see, I know it's small. These slides are in Spanish. Shockingly enough, I know, I'm not fluent in Spanish. So it was a stretching time, a humbling time to work through that language barrier, but a really, really neat, probably the coolest thing I've got to do on government dime, and go down and actually teach some of these students, see the light bulbs come on, just as motivated as you are coming to this event. There are other people around the world that really, really want to be at events like this, that really, really want to be at the feet of people learning about this, and I just want to highlight that as well. So who are we as BLOKWORX? There's only one slide really on this, but just to get a proper introduction, we essentially provide managed prevention with a team that's over 60% former DoD and military. There are going to be 2 different groups in that. We have a lot of DoD that were in some form of communications or cyber element, but if any veterans in the room know, the private sector to public sector, government sector kind of translation is meh at best, right? There's certain applications on green gear that you will or will not see in private sector. So they come into our entry-level roles, which are truly entry-level. Now, why do I say truly entry-level? Because who in here has seen an entry-level role in cybersecurity on LinkedIn that requires 4 years experience? Yeah, all right. Half of you are honest people, but they're out there, right? And why is this important? Is because if we don't give people the opportunity to learn and enter into this space, then we're still going to see articles about the talent deficit in cyber. We're still going to see studies about the talent deficit on blue teams and that talent. So that's what we do. We exist to defend livelihoods with a SOC that we house right here in the United States. Now, what's a plaguing problem in 2023? We're going to unpack this a little bit. I promise it's about cyber. Just stay with me here. According to the Center for Disease Control via research published online, about 697,000 people die of heart disease in the United States. That's 1 in 5. It's a staggering number. It is a plaguing problem. Additional data that I researched and pulled this weekend, specifically from iData Research online back in September, saying that the number of cardiac surgeries has exceeded 900,000 procedures a year, estimated to grow to 1.3 million by 2029. What is this saying? It's saying that it's a problem today that a lot of people are seeking help for, and it's only going to grow. It's only going to be projected to grow. Finally here, according to Forbes, this is one back from January of this year, just 28% of Americans are exercising enough, and it's even lower in some regions. Now, one really important note here I want you guys to not miss. Roughly half of American adults, or 117 million people, have at least one preventable chronic disease. Preventable chronic disease. Don't miss that. So what can we all seemingly benefit from? A bit of a mindset shift applied to our health. Now let's unpack this and how does it relate to cyber. According to Security, it's a small business cyber attack statistic research report that went out September 5th, again just 30 days ago. In 2020, small businesses faced over 700,000 attacks. 900,000 procedures, 700,000 attacks. There's a lot of similarity here that we can't afford to miss. 40% of those small businesses worldwide have reported losing essential data due to an attack. Got a couple of recent studies here, and we'll see if you guys remember these. AWS Capital One, who remembers this one? Right? Huge breach of over 100 million credit card applicants' data, right? And this was simply due misconfiguration of a firewall on AWS. Now, really clearly, I want to get this out of the way. This is not disparaging or demonizing any of these entities, but just don't miss the point of misconfiguration. October 2021, who's on Twitch? Not streaming. Who watches? Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're waking up. We're waking up. October 2021, misconfiguration in a server hosted by Twitch streaming platform, also owned by Amazon, which is a funny correlation here, leads to a leak of source code for the company's streaming service, but not just that. An unreleased Steam competitor for Amazon Game Studios, and details of content creator payouts. Who in here wants the world reading our pay stub? Not me, right? And so it's staggering, because this is not their data, it's user data that needs to be protected. But again, misconfiguration. Finally, Microsoft was so kind to give us a 30-day relevant example of this exact same problem in a well-intended, and I want to highlight that, in a well-intended act. Microsoft went so far to share some AI and open market research data with a group of researchers, but leaked 38 terabytes of data due to personal data exposed via an Azure storage bucket due to misconfiguration. Right? So how is this relevant? It seems like we can also benefit with a mindset shift applied to our approach to cybersecurity. We're getting a little too comfortable, I would venture to say, with this becoming an everyday or every year thing from major companies that house our data. So what's the point, Mike? Why are you telling me about heart disease at a cybersecurity conference based on automation? Why are we talking about current events? Because I think honestly we need to reflect and be honest with ourselves that we have a difficult time putting best practice into practice when it comes to cybersecurity prevention. It's not just the people at this conference. Y'all are just the ones that are motivated enough to tend, learn, and see how you can be better. Because here's the reality, I get the privilege of talking to a lot of different places, whether they're cyber summits or like a CompTIA ChannelCon, for example, talking about AI. I have people that show up to $5,000 conferences looking for some new silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity that don't have MFA enabled. I apologize, sir or ma'am, I can't teach you anything if you don't take prevention seriously. And what does MFA cost? Has Microsoft monetized it? This is an honest question. Can you just enable it still in Office 365? Right? On your bank accounts? Yep. So I wonder if we're educated beyond our obedience when it comes to prevention. That's the kind of purpose of our talk. So this is going to be the minority. Point one is prevention is profitable. This is important, I think, because specifically I do a lot of time talking with security teams that look at budget, of like how much money do I have to spend on these tools and spend on this effort versus cyber insurance policies and claims and things like that. There's a lot of money in play here. So between Q1 and Q2 of 2021, average ransomware payment hit just over $500,000 because of something called quadruple extortion. Not going to unpack it here, but ransomware actors are getting crafty, right? And it's been said time and time again from all the other speakers you guys have had the privilege of hearing from that as long as there's money in this game, they're going to keep innovating. Just like we are as blue teamers, as defenders, to keep innovating as well. Now, how is this relevant? Because through our experience, to protect just 25 users in an SMB environment, it's maybe $6,000 a year. These are real figures, not made up numbers. That's $500 a month. $500 a month. Where else do we see this? Well, we go back to the heart disease analogy. What does it take? A little bit of exercise, a little bit of day. Running shoes cost 80, 90 bucks, and a little bit of time. There are preventable ways to deal with these things. Now, can you prevent all risk? No, it's a percentage of risk. But what I'm venturing to almost propose is that we can be better about prevention. And what does this give security teams or service providers? 50 to 60% margin ROI alone on the money that you're spending looking at your budget, becoming more efficient with time. Better sleep at night, which is not to be undervalued. Everybody in this room knows that you have been ready to go home into your weekend on a Friday night and something somewhere went bump, right, when it came to security. We know the value of this time. We can't underestimate it. Ongoing client trust. Scalability, proof of value, better heart health. Now, to remain scientifically accurate, there's limited science that points to better heart health being tied to prevention, but maybe one day we'll have that statistic here for us. Now, prevention is possible, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time together. Because I don't want to just come up here and be this idealistic, optimistic outview on security and not provide you real metrics, real ones and zeros from the trench of how we're seeing this as possible. So cyber signals, if you're not familiar with this, I'm all about education and learning about what more resources are available. This is something put out by Microsoft. The specific article I reviewed was from August of 2022, and this specifically highlighted something that found it lists 4 total problems tied back to almost every breach. Okay, so Microsoft did all the hard work for us, did the research, boiled it down to 4 main problems. Now, if we look at those common patterns, we found them to be 2 of which preventable. Number 1, stolen passwords and unprotected identities. At the end of the day, thieves will steal things, right? Like, we're not going to eliminate all thieves, just like we can't eliminate all login attempts to Office 365, right? It is something that we can't possibly eliminate the potential of. However, number 2, missing or disabled security products. What you're going to see in almost every observed ransomware incident, at least one system exploited in the attack had missing or misconfigured security products that allowed intruders to tamper with or disable certain protections. We had the right controls. They just weren't set up right. Number 3, misconfigured or abused applications. You might use a popular app for one purpose, but that doesn't mean criminals can't weaponize it for another goal. Too often, legacy configurations mean an app is in its default state, allowing users access to the entire machine if they can hijack that process. Again, misconfigured applications. We're seeing this common thread through current events as well as the Microsoft release. Slow patching. It's cliche, like eat your vegetables. Candidly, really tied well to this whole heart disease analogy, right? But it's critical to fact. The best way to harden software is to keep it up to date. While cloud-based apps update, we need to push those updates. These are already known vulnerabilities that have had patches released by the vendors, and I hate to break this to you, but most attacks are not nation-state funded, emerging 0 days that just come out of the wild. The majority of attacks and compromises are things that were patched weeks, months, years ago, right? And some people still tell me, but I can run Windows 7. It's fine. And I say, well, Windows 7 came out when Shaq started playing basketball, all right? That's a long time ago. And we just need to think about this. Can we prevent this? Absolutely. Now, prevention technology that proves it's possible. Now, I know we're all engineers in the room, so I had to make this last-minute edit to the slide. I wanted to show you actual processes here, and before I do that, we have a historical. It's not as good as Matt's trivia, I gotta admit, but in the scope of the Manhattan Project, there were 2 bombs developed. Does anyone know the names of those? Fat Man and Little Boy. All right, so to clear my name here, that's the reference, all right? This is not we're not harping on anything else other than nuclear payloads within the scope of test environments. So what we had is essentially the process chain on the left. You'll see the process ID listed, the date of execution, but you also notice at the top, what do we see? We've seen it a couple of times. Scott, specifically from Tidal Cyber, gave you a really, really good look at what up at the top? MITRE attack. right? So what we have is the tactic, technique, and sub-technique. So when we're looking at all this behavior analysis, we cannot just look at the file hash or the behavior, but we can look at what tactic is being employed here. And MITRE is incredibly helpful for this. Moving right along, we also have static analysis that can look at and classify threats based on their behavior. So this one was absolutely confirmed to be ransomware. Upon further investigation, the malware family was Lockbit. This was confirmed by our analysts soon thereafter. Lockbit 3.0 during live fire testing, took it into a sandbox, detonated it against another machine. Sure enough, dark side Lockbit 3.0. Prevented pre-execution before it hit disk, before it can encrypt a single file. It is possible. That's all I'm here to say. It's possible. And this perpetuates trust. Again, looking at these MITRE techniques, if you're able to map certain active actions by this, here's the really important point. We can also capture this residually during a scan, whether it's sitting there undetected or undetonated. That's also an important point, because how many environments do we manage? We have a good grasp of what the current health and wellness of. Again, MITRE mapping's there for reference. But again, I couldn't talk to engineers without breaking out the actual screenshots and the ones and zeros here. So prevention proof of value. Now here's the fun part, because we get to get into a bit of a gloryless space here. As practitioners, we can go 30 days, the end users under our care are like, you know, those IT guys, you know, what do they do? Right? No interruptions, 30 days, emails up, security's good, life's grand. You're going on vacation. What do you guys even do, man? Right? Fast forward. Office 365 emails slow. Security, AV, whatever it is, stops their process or their application. Man, what do you guys even do? What are you guys paid for? Right? There's a hard grasp on the value that as cybersecurity or cyber practitioners, we could be allocated from everyday users. So we need some proof of value. Because who in here like me takes vitamin C, elderberry, tries to keep the cold away while you travel? Anybody else? Yeah? What proof of value do you have? Do I have? That has kept me safe. Well, it's difficult, right? How do you prove an absence? And that's the difficulty with prevention. I have to admit, it's difficult to prove evidence of an absence unless you're able to actually tie these metrics back with reporting. So what we have here is just one organization that we have this example drawn out for. 170, this is in the past 90 days, so July 1 to October 1, 170 billion with a B files scanned. Of those, over about 12,000 devices and ransomware threats prevented, folks. This is the proof of value. But if you look, how many files do we need to sift through? A lot. Look high and low. But you got a whole matrix here above me of the file types, you know, TIFFs, ZARs, zips. Again, this is the creativity of threat actors. Majority of it's going to be PEs, portable executables, but we need to have the ability to monitor any file type. In-memory threats, PowerShell threats, there's all of this, but there is reporting that proves it's possible and proves it can perpetuate trust. Now where does this all tie in? So when we perpetuate trust, it's cost effective. Kind of an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? Cliche, but I've been to the doctor. Some of us have. It adds up. Prevention reduces human suffering, and this is where we get into the core purpose of who we are. Everyone in here is in cybersecurity in some form or fashion because they have a desire to protect. There is this ownership that you have over safeguarding everyday people from threats that they candidly probably can't wrap their head around. Am I right or am I wrong? It's the appeal of the industry. It's not easy. You guys aren't here because it's easy, let's be honest. Right? So what's driven you? The challenge? Yeah. You get to tinker? Are we all just video gamers that found a job? Right? Full-time, 9 to 5? A little bit of everything, right? But you got to admit there's a fulfilling part of this piece. There really is. Prevention ensures national security. Who remembers Colonial Pipeline? That kind of woke a lot of people up. When they couldn't go to the gas station and get gas, users maybe would listen to MFA a little bit more, right? Like, here's the kinetic effects of what happens when infrastructure isn't properly secured. Prevention is sustainable. It's far easier to do this over time. Now, I have the privilege in that cyber defense unit of the Marine Corps. Most of my peers are AWS, Google, Cloud, and Azure Cloud incident responders. They're billing $475 an hour to rip people out of compromised systems. Ransomware encrypted servers, they got to get them back up. Rebuild domain controllers overnight. It's crazy. I can't do it with 3 kids. If anybody does it in here, that's incredible. But how much more sustainable is something if we could just stay left of boom, if we could prevent it? Again, not everything, but more than we are today, based on misconfiguration. And it results in resilience over time. It is easier to sustain. Our security posture is heightened if we believe in this principle and we put it into work a little bit more. And candidly, I believe it's our ethical responsibility to pursue this more. Just like I could be a better husband and father by taking care of myself, I'm here for the long run. I'm here to see my girls graduate high school, walking down the aisle one day. That'll be 40 years from now, thankfully. But it's our ethical responsibility to do this. I really, truly believe. So here's where it gets fun, LimaCharlie. What can you do with this platform when you adopt a mindset of prevention? So what we have the ability to do is currently basically take endpoint asset inventory. I can see where our sensors are deployed. I have absolute visibility of my house. What's in order, what's not, what sensors are deployed, what's not. But I can also run a check of my endpoint protection services. Translation, your AV, whatever other controls you have in place. I could check their live status, I could check the service status, and I could perform routine health checks. But even more than that, with this friendly neighborhood SecOps cloud platform, you can build DNR rules that execute basic troubleshooting steps. DNR rule, if this service is not running, then perform a repair, start a service. Report, even just report on it for further investigation. But again, it's an automation conference. How can we get ahead of this? So we've even built in a way to automate the self-repair of those agents. If these services aren't running, attempt to start. If attempt to start ran, then, if it's still not running, attempt to perform a repair. We have a repair utility. That runs, all in the background with no end user impact, no reboot, no pop-up, no nothing. If that doesn't work, run an uninstall and reinstall. All of this can be done through DNR rules. All you need is an imagination and a thought on prevention. So what we have here is just the query. This is from my box. I pulled this 3 days ago to make sure it was current. And we have 5 different services running. This is our endpoint suite, right? This is what we're running on every Windows machine specific to what we're responsible for protecting with prevention. So that's the query. We're running, hey, number 1, are these running? That's going to be my first entry point. Number 2, then you would go and, again, you would proceed through the logic and say, hey, if this isn't running, then do this. If you've already done this, then do that. If that's failed, then do this. But you can automate a lot of this, and this has been, candidly, pretty incredible to see work out and play out. So how do we start talking about prevention more? Because I don't think that we can just walk out of here and say, all right, I believe, Mike, it sounds great. We have to start talking about it. We need to start with our teams more. We need to start with those that are responsible for building these solutions together. So going back to our opening analogy. Between 2018 and 2020, Time magazine ran innumerable articles specifically highlighting the effects heart disease has on the general population, with intent to what? Combat these plaguing problems by educating readers who commonly suffer from the kinetic effects of these issues. Who thinks end users today are interested in cybersecurity? Like the everyday person. I think they're more interested than you think, because when they can't work, what can't they do? And we saw this, 2018, 2019. It was a very big disruption of people being voluntold and working in a business continuity environment. Because what happened? Well, home became the office, the classroom, the daycare, everything at once. Cyber became very real to a lot of people and the ailments that they're in. So let's navigate through these, and we could play with audience participation. We could translate some of these. All right, so April 9, 2018. Exercise could lower your chances of getting heart disease, even if you're genetically at risk. Are we going to remove the risk of cybersecurity? Are we going to eliminate it? Make it 0%? Never. We won't. But are there steps we can take to lower the chances? Most definitely. June 19, 2018. This one's fun. How marriage can actually protect your heart health. Who's like, this is false? Okay, this is true? All right, everybody didn't vote. I appreciate you. How marriage can actually protect your heart health. We'll swap out marriage for MFA. How does that read? Can MFA protect your heart health? It sounds simple, guys, and I didn't come here just to tell you about MFA, but it's staggering. It is staggering. The level of people still reusing passwords, the level of people still not implementing MFA. Preventable. September 6th, 2018, preventable heart problems killed 415,000 people in 2016. Here's how you can keep your heart healthy. It's not minimizing the impact or minimizing the effects of it, but there are some ways that you could absolutely communicate to users in a way that says, here's some 2 to 3 things that you can do. It's October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. What can we do? 8 science-backed ways to prevent heart attacks. Unconfirmed science-backed ways to leverage prevention. May 6, 2019, heart problems are killing more Americans, even younger ones. Here's how to reduce your risk. January 8, 2020, scientists calculated how much longer you can live. So here's the point, guys. It is preventable more than we think. And it just requires a level of diligence, or requires a level of intentionality that I'm not saying anyone in this room this lacks, but I've seen a lot of people admit this defeatist mindset when it comes to cybersecurity. And say, you know what, it's just a matter of if but when. There are companies today who have still never been breached. Whether they're really good at the lotto, or they're really good at prevention. Something's got to be true. So with that, the practical takeaway. So we have a diagram here that's a roadmap to prevention that all of you will be able to leave with in a way of like, hey, Mike, how do I practically start walking away with? And before we go, we're going to map this to what LimaCharlie can provide you today in the way of the feature set. Continuously evolving. So this began in 2018 specifically because we saw a heavy emphasis leaning towards compliance. Both cyber insurance kind of being the bad guy in the room and compliance frameworks, specifically CMMC, NIST, undercarriaging that, and CIS. It's a series of processes, tools, and controls, and they're building blocks to cybersecurity. So here are the 21 blocks. So what you have in the top left, those in the darker shade are going to be critical. This is what you need to obtain certainty around prevention. And it's 12 things. And say, Mike, is that easy? Well, it wasn't easy getting out of bed going for a run this morning. I promise you that. But I got there eventually. And I think that could be all of us. I think we can get here eventually. But then those specifically highlighted in white, you'll notice are compliance-based. These are going to be more commonly found in CIS, CMMC, NIST frameworks that you're going to see these required in. Now the really cool thing about LimaCharlie is you'll see a number of different features already built into that platform. You'll see advanced endpoint defense, next-gen analytics of events. You'll also see threat hunting, deploy advanced detection tools to identify those threats. It's as good as you can figure it to be, with those Sigma rules built in, with other rules that you can build out. Multi-factor authentication is also on the LimaCharlie platform. Unfortunately, it can't enforce it unless you build a rule for it. XDR, you're looking at extended detection and response, complete visibility. Because at the end of the day, we can't secure an environment we don't have complete visibility to. So again, this is going to be available to everybody. If you simply go to the website, BLOKWORX 21 blocks, we've made this link live for today. Just navigate to it, toss in your info, you'll go ahead and get that downloaded to your machine. And you can even map it to what controls you currently have and see, hey, where am I at? How do I scale on my prevention-centric controls? This is not minimizing the good use of cyber insurance, the good use of red team tools and pen testing. It's not minimizing that. But we wanted to provide a tangible roadmap for people to look at and adopt and use as a, hey, where am I at in the prevention standpoint, whether you're under a compliance or whether you're not, and what things could be easily ingestible things that I could check off and build a roadmap around. So with that, that's going to conclude the presentation. Have about 2 or 3 minutes for questions. I'm also available afterwards before we call it, but I want to be respectful of the time.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh.
Thanks for the talk.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, you talk about MFA and getting the simple stuff right before you move on to more complex stuff.
Sure.
I heavily agree with that. Something that I face in my day-to-day is that a lot of users get fatigue about specifically MFA
Yep.
changing constantly.
Yep.
And they don't understand why that technology is necessary to prevent these attacks.
Right.
What do you have to speak upon that?
And what's your name?
Lee.
Lee, I appreciate the question, man. So I'm going to use my sweet 5-foot-tall Italian mother, who's 74 years old, as an example. So I'm in Home Depot. I'm just picking out paint. I'm doing a normal dad thing, right? Somehow I found myself picking out paint. And I get a phone call. My mom says, hey, I got this call from Amazon. And everybody's smirking in the room. It wasn't Amazon, spoiler alert. And they said, I got this charge for like $1,800 on a gaming laptop. So my first question to her, did you buy a gaming laptop? You're so kind. I know Christmas is coming. That's exactly what I wanted. She said, no, of course I didn't. I said, okay. Did you check your bank account? She said, yep. I said, was there any money missing? She said, no. I said, okay, great. She's like, but then they had me install this application. And I melted into the paint bucket. I was like, well, Mom, I hate to break it to you, but your phone's compromised. Sure enough, it was Screen Connect on her phone. I paid the price for having my mom live in Chattanooga, and I lived in Chicago at the time. But what's the message in this? Well, my dad passed away 2017. We went and looked for a place for my mom to live, right? Something that she felt comfortable in, safe, secure. And we looked at a number of communities, and we found a gate guard community with apartments she loved. Now, what is my experience when I go to see her? I have to go through the gate, I have to show the security guard my ID. Every single time I go to see my mom, I'm the same person, right? I'm the same son, I haven't changed, right? I'm on the list. She's like, yeah, he can. The gate guard calls my mom, do you want to see your son? Yes. And I go through. What have I sacrificed? I've sacrificed a tangible amount of accessibility in the name of what? Security. So I think we have a tough time trying to communicate the value to users because it's like, well, we just have to do this, right? Just trust us, right? But at the end of the day, there's two forces in the world, and they're not Jedi and Sith. I don't believe that they're combating. I believe they're complementary, and it's accessibility, it's ease of use, and security. And they're on a scale. And for every single port I open on the firewall to get remote access, I tip the other end of the scale. These are true facts of security today. You cannot add a feature or add a function without doing something to that other side. You can't. Now, what can you do? You can augment the other side and probably make it a little bit tougher to get in. But here's the reality. Hey, I understand that MFA is cumbersome. I understand that when you try to access it, you have to look at your phone, pull it out. If it's push, if it's temporary one-time password, it's tangibly harder to get in. And that's the point. That's the point.
Yeah, I guess my question is more speaking to, like shifting from SMS to factor authentication to authenticator apps.
Yeah.
And these users, they see that and they see the SMS.
Right.
And the attacks still happen. And
of course.
we're going to change the technology.
Yeah, eSIM being everywhere and SIM swapping. Yeah,
and they don't
absolutely.
see the value in that. And communicating that to the users is often complicated.
It is often complicated. That's a great understatement. Candidly, to respect time, I think end users with a little lead time, a little expectation setting can go a long way. There'll always be one or two, right? Like you're never gonna win the whole crowd. But I think again, hey, as a heads up users, we're going into the holiday season. January 5th, MFA is going to be required. We're going to let you know what this looks like. We're going to make a screenshot guide of here's what to expect. I've seen a lot of companies have success with that model. Don't enable it over Thanksgiving, right? Like there's ways to be wise and think of users when doing this. But again, I think there's ways to really educate. I've had a lot of light bulbs come on for a lot of users when we say, hey, it's more difficult to get in. And indeed, that's the point. Why? Because what does it do? It secures company revenue. What does company revenue go towards? People's paychecks, their promotions, their jobs, their raises, right? Like we have to communicate it in a way that's not demeaning, right? But also in a way that's like it really does make a difference. Now, are we going to eliminate the risk from end users' perspective? Never, right? But again, I'm not gonna make heart disease go extinct. But I think there's more we can do. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, listen.